lot of people have a different understanding about jazz, and as if it's somehow separate. But what I'd like to share with you guys today is just how similar it actually is, and talk about New Orleans and why that is. So I got to hang out today, got to spend a lot of time with Nabil, who talked about the program that he started, and it was very exciting. And what I realized is how many similarities that you have here in terms of being in a very culturally rich environment, yet challenged in different ways as well. So I would say, when we talk about culture, we're talking about basically a lot of different people having a lot of different dialogues, and out of that comes expressions of those dialogues, and sometimes of those conflicts. And that's what happened in New Orleans. So first, if it's okay with you, I'd just like to play a little bit for you, because I'm in a good mood, and I just want to make sure that this is going to work. So one of my clarinet players has also clarinet players. Yeah, great. It's a little bit different than yours, isn't it? It's actually the fingering system is more similar to the oboe. I actually learned on that one. See how the keys are different? See how different the keys are? I learned on this one. But when I looked at the pictures of the old New Orleans musicians, they were all playing this one. So I thought, well, I want to play New Orleans music. So I thought I had to change to one of these. And after I learned how to play the same music on this one, it was too late. I couldn't switch back. This was harder. It's missing some keys. But I guess the first thing about New Orleans is that, I guess people call me a jazz musician, but I never really think of it that way. I think of myself, I play New Orleans music. And I guess there's jazz elements in it. And when I say I play New Orleans music, it's music that has a very specific vocabulary. Is that me? I'm terrible. Oh, it's my bass player. He lives nearby. I wanted him to come hang out with me. Oh well. We might call him in a minute, see if he wants to bring his bass. So when we talk about New Orleans music, and that's what we're going to deal with. I'm not going to teach you how to play jazz, but I want you to play some New Orleans music with me. And actually, all that means is that we get to make some funny sounds on our instruments. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a music where basically every instrument that you have in the classical tradition basically was transformed to have a different range of expression, and for different reasons. So instead of having a sound where it's more like what you're used to. We get to do things like this instead. some things you think of when you hear someone play music like that? Just what is it? What does it sound like? Music for movies? What does it sound like?
Right.
Yeah. Fun. Fun. What about it? What about it seems fun? The mood's fun. Yeah, I'm in a fun mood. Just anything. What does it make you? Does it make you think of anything? You get pictures in your head, or do you see? Well, I know my man here watches what's with the show. Does it sound like some of the music from the show? What's the show you're talking about? The television show?
Oh, True Blood.
Does that make music like that in it once in a while?
Yeah.
Every now and then?
I think of something lazy here.
Yeah, lazy. Yeah, the blues.
Yeah.
The blues are lazy. That's all that was. It's just 3 courses of the blues. But you know, we get to do things. See, I didn't grow up in New Orleans. I grew up in California, and my training was classical. But I had a bit of a problem. I had sort of the inability to do the same thing more than once. I had the inability to do the same thing the same way. So I would get to a certain point in the music, and I'd be okay. But then when it came to you know, for instance, if somebody told me that I had to start playing for you right now at a certain dynamic level, mezzo forte, mezzo piano. If I had to do that, I couldn't do it. It comes out how it comes out, and then I can go from there. It can be somewhere close to that. You know, if I say it's piano, I know it's going to come out a little soft, but sometimes I don't really have that much. It just never really came out exactly the way I wanted. And for classical music, it's got to come out pretty much. They're counting on you to make sure that it comes out exactly the way that you're supposed to. Just never worked for me really. So I decided that it was probably better if I go into a different type of music. And so that's why I discovered the jazz tradition. But most of the musicians in New Orleans had classical training. A lot of people don't realize that. New Orleans was the first city in the United States to have opera. There was actually a French opera and an Italian opera, and they used to compete with each other. And they had orchestras and a lot of brass bands. So we have a lot of marching band traditions. And I think the other thing to remember about New Orleans is how many different cultures were there at the same time. It was a colony of France for a long time, and then it was a colony of Spain for a long time. And then the Spanish sold it back to France so that Napoleon could sell it to the United States. And in that process, because of the traditions, because of the practice of slavery, we had a lot of people from different parts of the world, different countries in Africa through slavery, but also through the Caribbean. And all of these rhythms that were coming from West Africa, and these drumming traditions, influenced the way everybody played their instruments. So, for instance, when we talk about New Orleans rhythm, you guys know what that feels, right? When we talk about jazz and ragtime, yeah. All those little syncopations we have, and it comes from a different way of approaching the instrument. Another thing that I like about the music that I play is that I get to choose when I use my tongue, or when I get to articulate something. I'd be in trouble if I had to play time with my fingers the way you do in classical music. I'd be in trouble. and we're talking about, because basically it's the attack of the notes, the strong attack of the notes that gives us that rhythm. So keep that in mind, because when we get going here in a minute, I'm going to count on you to all have a nice strong attack. Well, I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we've got a combination of instruments that's just it would be really too bad to not try to see what it sounds like together. Just this instrumentation in the room here. This is going to be great. I see our strings come divided up a little bit. That's okay. We're all we'll figure it out. But so when I think about New Orleans music, not necessarily jazz, that's what I think about. I think about all those different things. And opera, for instance, some of my favorite musicians, they actually grew up listening more to opera than they did to anything else. In fact, when they were kids, they would get in trouble if they went to go hear the musicians who played blues or something like that. But they listened to the records. And one of my favorite musicians was a clarinet player named Sidney Bechet. And he was one of the first ones to do something very interesting with the blues and with this music. He had the same problem I did. He took classical lessons from a famous teacher who was a teacher of many of the clarinets in New Orleans, but Sidney also couldn't do the same thing, twice. He played in bands where he had to do that, but he also just he didn't like reading music. He was much more happy to kind of, figure it out once and then memorize it and then be done with it, so that he could spend the rest of his time kind of looking around the room and seeing what else was going on. But what Sidney did with this music, and with this idea of improvising, because of all the classical music he listened to, he found a way to make things up on the spot, but give them a sense of architecture, like composed music, so that as it went along, it developed the way he thought it should. And he approached his instrument in a very different way. He was more influenced by opera singers than he was by other clarinetists. So he adopted a sound that was like that. There's something that he used to do at parties. He would play some of the music that he remembered from the operas he liked to listen to. So he'd get out his horn, and people at the party would be very happy that he was going to play for them. Instead of playing blues, he would do something like this. We talk about musicians like Sidney Bechet and Louis Armstrong. The reason that we talk about them is because the way that they approached the instrument became part of the vocabulary that we think of when we think of New Orleans music. And that's what I love about it. And what I want to share with you is the idea that those differences in how the instruments get approached, especially instruments from classical setting, whatever that system of embellishments are, or whatever the variations of the instrument, vibrato, portamento, think of the slides that you can make because you have a pitch continuum that doesn't have a break in it. Those are the things that define any given style of music, no matter what it is. I mean, so if we're talking about New Orleans music, there are things that I'm doing that are from New Orleans music. But if I'm making sounds like this, we have a different tradition, don't we? We're not New Orleans anymore, are we? All right? Or the Caribbean tradition of the clarinet, or the unfortunately, not all, for better or worse, French horn, for example, not too many jazz French horn players out there creating new vocabulary of the instrument. But there's every now and then, little different ways to approach the flute and music. And then the violin, well, the stringed instruments, a lot of stringed instruments in the early bands of New Orleans. All the ragtime orchestras actually had, if you look at the sheet music, there's parts for all the stringed instruments. But it wasn't really that economical. And so when they figured out that you could have a band play a parade in the daytime and a concert at night, and the violin part could be covered by the clarinetist, that was when we started to say goodbye to the flutes and goodbye to the violins. And in New Orleans, basically clarinet at first was just a loud violin. Basically, that's the role that we had. And then eventually, when the trumpet started playing the lead, then we got to play some harmony. Do I have any trumpet players?
My son.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. All right, that's okay. So, I guess that's what I wanted to say about New Orleans and what a special place it is. But I think there's three elements of the music that goes into making music in New Orleans that makes it different than making music in other places. And these are the things that basically led us up to the jazz tradition. But the reason that I wanted to talk to you about them is because they're exactly the three things that we're going to do to create our own little jazz band for the moment. One of the first thing is rhythm. Let's just stand up for a second. So, when we talk about jazz rhythm, what's different about jazz rhythm than rhythm? Who tells you where the beat is in your orchestra? Yeah. And does it stay the same all the time? Sometimes. Some pieces of music stay the same, some pieces it doesn't, right? Right? Okay, well, the thing about New Orleans music is that this was not, this was dance music. And in social dancing, right, the beat's got to be pretty steady, doesn't it? What happens if it's not? Is it easy to dance to music that speeds up and slows down? I mean, it can be done, I suppose. I mean, ballet, right? They're very careful to work out. But if you're with somebody and the band is speeding up and slowing down, it's a little hard. So we'll get our rhythm going using an African tradition called the stomp clap. Guess what the stomp clap is? There's a stomp part and a clapping part. That's what I call the stomp clap. Oh, you guys have your horns in your hand, don't you? Can you very carefully set them down so that you can stomp clap with me for a minute? All right. Just stomp clap. Just very carefully set them down. And we're going to get our stomp clap going so that we can talk about playing music with that pulse. Oh yeah, you want to come up here and do it? We can do it up here if you want.
Yeah, go up.
Or I'll come down. How about that? So, all right. We get our stomp clap going. Come on. All right. Now, first thing I need you to do is relax a little bit. There you go. Relax a little bit. We don't want to speed up. Here's how we're going to make it a little bit different. With jazz, we actually change the energy of what we're doing by adding emphasis to certain notes. So instead of, we're going to change the emphasis a little bit. We're going to give it a little bit of a swing. actually using swing. Now, what does it mean to be using swing anyway? So besides just being a slight accent of some different parts of the beat that make us want to move forward, you guys are swinging right now. You guys are creating a groove, and actually to swing, it really involves more than one person. All it means to swing is to be creating a common feeling with the people that you're making music with. So when we talk, so in my world, all music swings. All good music swings. It doesn't swing like in the swing style necessarily, but you know, Vivaldi swings. Bach swings. You know, and piano players? Anybody?
Piano players.
Or piano players.
Most
Bach
you are-
swings, right? Right? Really, I mean, no, it's not a swing rhythm. But it's when it's right, it swings. It propels itself. And ensembles that are orchestrated to play Bach, I mean, it's really, boy, I mean, once it gets going. So we don't mean it swings like that. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna actually do that little articulation thing on our instruments so that we can kind of feel that. But then there's another part of it in jazz too, and that's where we start to play with that beat that we just created. So that if we're stomping, if the beat's a big circle, and we're stomping right in the middle of it, we can create a different feeling by playing and articulating and swinging on one side of that or the other. If we're on the back side of it, it gives a feeling of relaxation. If we're on the front side of it, it gives a feeling of excitement. So we'll do the stop clap, and I'll try to play in the center of it for a second, and then I'll come back a little bit, and you'll feel a huge difference. Here we go. So here we go. So here's the second. That we create when we're playing on the different side of it. All right, you guys ready to give it a shot? Make some New Orleans music with me? Mm-hmm. All right, let's get the horns out. Let's figure this out. Who has an etude they want to play for me? Something. How about we have a couple cellos? Do we have a cello?
Yeah.
Chili? Where's our cello? Yeah. Can you come up? Is there an etude that you can play a little bit of that we can use? What? Is there an etude you've got that we can use? Maybe an
Etude.
Etude.
No, nothing.
But maybe you can play Bach. It would be interesting to use that.
Yeah, let's do a little. Do you want the berets? So which one? Let's see. Let me think about.
فضحنا. مهدي تعال جنبه. تعال جنبه عشان اقدر اصور.
What key is this beret in? What key is that in? Yeah, it's in D. So where does it start on? Stop right there. Good. Then what happens? Okay, cool. So let's play with that for a second. We'll do this. We'll be in D minor, and we'll go. Let's get our stop. together. Cool. Let's do that. We'll go back to the first part again. So it'll be a. Good. Yeah, let's just repeat that. And so the second, so it'll be we'll have two parts of the phrase. This one. And the second part of the phrase. Okay? Do that last part. Yeah? That's easier, isn't it? Good. Here we go. Change it. Change it. All right, let's change it a little bit easier now. Yeah? So, let's try to do it in unison together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, good. I'll stop clap. You don't have to clap. I'll stop clap. Just gonna. Ready? 1, 2, Great. Excellent, excellent. Wow, that's very quick. So one of the elements of New Orleans music is that basically in many of the bands there was only one person that actually could read music, and that was usually the piano player or the violinist, and they usually were women actually. The piano players in most of the bands were women, and it was actually, if you played piano and you were a guy, they actually thought it was kind of a weird thing. But that changed eventually. But what would happen, so it would be the piano